Alright guys, Brian with VetteSource back again this afternoon, continuing on with our disassembly of our 1991 Corvette salvage parts car that we picked up a few weeks ago. Today what we're going to be focusing on is back to the rear of the car. We're going to go ahead and tackle this rear bumper assembly like we talked about earlier. If you're just now tuning in for the first time, if you haven't seen some of the other videos that I put together, I've got a link up at the top of the video of a playlist for this 1991 Corvette that I put together to show the videos so far of us removing the front end components, front bumper, headlights, tearing the cooling system out of the car, and some other things. So today what I'm going to focus on again, or start on today, is the rear bumper assembly. And like I said, if you look at those other videos, specifically the one involving the tear down of the front bumper assembly, which I've got a link above at the top of the video to show that one. This rear bumper is a little bit more involved to get off the car. There's a lot of bolts and fasteners that don't make themselves readily apparent when you're tearing these things down. So everything in this rear bumper is hidden. All the nuts and bolts and fasteners are not in a spot where you'd expect them to be at. The tail light bolts are actually, if I can find my tail light I have here, the spare one, are, even though you have exposed bolts right here to change the bulbs, what you don't have is a way to get the housings out. The bolt assemblies go on the back of the housings. So the obvious question is, hey, what am I going to do to get in there? So the trick involves basically pulling the reverse lamps out first, and then essentially working your arm, sneaking your arm up in there to where you can get to that first assembly there, and then over from this assembly over to this assembly. Then what we've got to do once we get the lamps out is we've got to get this inner fender well out of the car so that we can get all the perimeter bolts over here out of it, and the perimeter bolts run all the way up along the inside of this. Now today I may not be able to keep the camera on while I'm doing some of this tear down, simply because some of these are harder to get to and require me to use both my hands while I'm doing it. So let me get my tools set up and see what I can get on camera for you guys to see, and we'll go from there. Be right back. Okay guys, I'm back with the first part of our setup completed. So as you can see here, what I'm into is our wheel well here, our rear wheel well. This piece here is our rear splash shield or wheel well that goes across here, and of course I've got to remove this so I can get back behind here to get up to these nuts. There are nuts back inside of here that attach this rear bumper to the lower portion of this quarter panel. So I've kind of pre-loosened these already so that I can get those out. So I'm gonna start here in the front, just get these out of the way. And I've got my little hardware bag here so we can get these out. But a lot of these bolts that GM like to use from this era are these small Torx head bolts. I believe these are a T15 if I'm remembering correctly. And I've pre-loosened them, of course, just to kind of get them out of the way so we don't waste a lot of time here on the video just watching me do this. But these are small. Now on these smaller bolts, there's one that actually is a bigger bolt. There's a T30 right there. That's because there's an inner support from the aluminum impact bar that goes out there that keeps that tension on this and keeps it flared out. So you'll want to remember that if you're ever putting them back together again. The rest of them are the small ones. So we've got those out. You can see it's hanging pretty good. I've actually even already got kind of semi-axis in there. But what I'm going to do is go ahead and finish taking out my 10mm bolts here in the back corner so I can get this completely out of my way. These hold this in on the back side here so that we'll stay secure against the frame rail. This is actually the rear frame rail of the car, if you're curious about it. They're little stubbies that are short, and there's an aluminum impact bar right here. So let me finish pulling that out of the way. Now you can kind of see what we're working with in here. So there is that frame rail. Remember, I keep talking about referencing C4 Corvette, C5 Corvettes frames and how they're built. There's a video I did on that, a link up at the top of the video there to show But you can see this is one solid mamma jamma right here. These are the frame rails. Go to the back, rear sway bar is connected there. In that corner, there's your rear differential connector. There's where your spring, and this is where your dog legs go in. They connect it to the back. But this whole assembly here, that's all metal. And it's very strong metal, even with added braces. This is an aluminum impact bar that holds a fuel tank, and I'll show that a little bit later in another video. So let me see if I can get in here real quick before I get set up to show you. There's one of those bolts that I was talking about right there. And here's another one right here. So on this section here, I'm gonna have to get through and take some things out of the way first, because I've got my side marker in the way here. I need to get out of the way. You can see there's really not a lot of room to work with in here. That's why this is a little bit more of a challenging thing. But let me get set up correctly so I can show you guys what I'm doing, and I'll be right back, okay? Okay, looking back in here, you can see that we were able to get our bolts started on the path to being loose or out of there. So I got that one cranking, and we're out, so that's finger tight, so I can pull that brace support down there, move that over to the side a little bit, and then I've got one more here. The leading bolt that retains a side marker in. Got that one loosened, so we can get that one out. And I already went ahead and pulled out the light bulb socket from there, so I can get to that. So fortunately, that's the only bit of what I can get done now, but you can kind of see here, if you look, that bracket's loose already, right there. So that sits there, that's what connects those two pieces. This would be the quarter panel here, and then down here is the rear bumper. So you can kind of vaguely see all the way back there is when the bolts start up at the rear bumper, where it makes that L-shaped curve here on the outside. So what I've got to do is start to get the tail lights and the reverse lights out. So let me get set up for that back there, and I'll be right back, guys. Hang tight. Okay, now I'm working here at the back of the car, and what I'm going to focus on right now are getting these 4 7mm bolts out right here. Now you can tell too just about how long this car was sitting with the debris and the gas fumes that kind of leak out, purge out of a gas tank after it's been sitting for a while. So unfortunately, they were not doing it any favors. But what this does here, by taking these out, it allows me to get in here and get my hands in there in a way to get access to these right here, the back bolts that are on those. So once I have these out of the way, I'll get those out. And you see those backup lights just sit right there with that. Just don't lose my bolt. And then what we do is you'll push in and pull out, and those reverse lights will come out. These are actually still quite usable. Just need to be polished up a bit, no cracks in them. So let me see if I can get the locking tab on these. These have a locking tab. You push in and turn, and those will take those out. And what we'll do to keep from, well, I'll get that in a minute. So get that over there. And then we've got, and if you can see here, where's my locking tab? I know I've got a locking tab here. There's my locking tab right there. I push in and turn. Push in and turn. Famous last words. Let's see, try one more way here. Okay. Well, it seems to be stuck. So I'll have to get after that one in a minute. At least we have access here. So you can see there's another 10mm bolt there. There's another 10mm bolt there. And then what I'm going to do here is start working to get to these first tail lights right here. So I'm going to see if I can do this a little bit on tape. Not going to beleaguer this, so you guys don't have to sit through 10 minutes of me cursing and screaming if it doesn't want to come out. We'll see if we can get this locking tab off. Locking tab is off. See, my hand is all the way back up in there. We'll take our 10mm box and start these. You want to be careful with these because these housings have a tendency to want to crack. So you don't want to go the wrong way, because then you'll accidentally crack them, and what you're trying to do is save them. So what you can't see really with my hand here is I got my hand back here behind this. I've got it just, and they're really not supposed to have that much tension on them, guys. If you over torque them, you will crack them. You can see, oh, well, there we go. So what that means is when that fell out with one bolt in, yeah, see that housing was cracked right there? So that's what happens to them over the years. So now that I've got this one out, I can snake my hand through into here and get that released. And then I'll work on this one. Let's see. A lot of times this is just a judgment call, because over the years you learn to know where these bolts are at. Okay, that one's loose. We got that one started. And let's see how this one treats us. And let's see, I think that one's still, that one's gonna be secure. So let me get a better position here before I fall over. And this one you got to get way back up in here. See how far my arm is in there? And unfortunately, unless you're dealing with a damaged quarter panel that you're not going to save in the meantime, or anyway when you're working on the car, this is probably the least invasive way to get in here and get these out of here. I know sometimes guys will like to drop that rear aluminum impact bar in the fuel tank assembly just so they can get in there. But that just creates a whole nother level of work to readjust that impact bar and get that in there. So you can see pretty low stress. We got both of those out. Now what I can do now is I'm seeing if it'll show here as I run the camera in here. Maybe. There's some bolts. Oh, I'm sorry, they're right there. There's one, and there's another one right there that I have to take out of here. So what I'm gonna do is get these started loose and up real quick, and then I'll be right back with you, okay? Hold on. All right, guys, we finished taking our taillights out at least and started on our inner bumper bolts. I'm afraid I may end up having to make this a two-parter episode, which I really don't like to do normally, but I'm losing my light. I'm gonna have to get finished here. So what I'm gonna do real quick is show you as we get in that corner there, those loosened up 10mm bolts that hold the vertical on this bumper. So we've got those two, actually came out pretty nice for me. Of course this one did not, the nut plate broke, but that's okay, we can fix that. And then on this side, what we've got is the 10mm in this corner, and this will be in this corner right here is where I'm pulling these out at. And those have come out. So we've got those. So what I'm gonna do here in just a second is pull this gas door out so I can kind of show you the rest of the bolts that hold this in are going to be along this perimeter right here inside of here, and I'm going to see if I can visualize a couple of those. You can kind of see already where it's starting to come loose. There's more of a gap right there. That's what we're looking for, but let me see if I can get in there real quick. I'm going to get that fuel door off or get my tools ready for it, and I'll be right back. Hang tight. All right, back at it again real quick. I'm going to get this fuel door assembly out of here so that we can get to some of these back bumper bolts without too much trouble, or as least amount of trouble as we can. These are held in place with real small T10 Torx. Again, there's that Torx bit that GM likes to use so much. And then once you get those 4 bolts out of there, that fuel door assembly just pulls straight up and out, pretty easy. So we'll get that done. You can see the mess that was this car here. Corvettes are unique from this era in that, excuse me, the fuel sending unit's on the top of the tank, right where you can get to it. So it's pretty easy to play with. If you got a bad fuel pump or you got a Corvette, a C4 that doesn't want to start, and it's been sitting for a while, 9 times out of 10, this is what's going to be your problem. So you can see this fuel sleeve here. This inlet housing is no good anymore, so it's sitting. What'll happen too is if you see that drain hose right there, that's connected to a drain hose that should be there and is not. And what that does, that'll back up too and cause water to sit in this little housing assembly, this rubberized housing. And then what it'll do is it'll leak fluid water right down in the fuel tank. This one actually looks pretty clean, so we'll have to take that apart and see what's in there. Let me see if I can get in here enough to see. Yeah, see that little bolt right there? That is one of our bolts that hold the rear bumper to the quarter panel. So those bolts are, let me get my phone focused back out again. Those bolts run all the way across here, all the way through there, all the way to the other side in there. So that's why I'm gonna end up having to stop for the night, guys, just because I won't be able to get this done before dark. And I wanna make sure you guys can at least see some of these others I pull out. And the ones here I'm gonna end up pulling out, they're gonna come out straight from here. I can actually put my hands on them right now, so it's not terribly bad. But we will get to those, we'll get cracking on that tomorrow, so make sure you stay tuned. Like, comment, subscribe if you'd like to see the second half of this as I get this bumper pulled off this old parts car here. And I want to thank everybody again if you stuck it out to the end and watched the video. I appreciate you, and we'll check back next time. Thanks, guys.